Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Vishal from Maharaja Agarsayan University, Badi, Himachal Pradesh. Today, we are going to talk on the module Lease Financing and Hire Purchase Financing for Entrepreneurs from the paper Entrepreneurship Development and Project Management. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the meaning of lease financing, to have the knowledge of types of leasing, describe the advantages and disadvantages of leasing, understand the role of hire purchase financing for the entrepreneurs, know about the statutory limit in hire purchase charges, and understand the rules of termination of the agreement. Lease contracts have long been an important alternative to direct ownership of an asset. One may opt to take a building on a lease or rent a car rather than owning them outright. Thus, assets can easily be acquired with lease finance, and while the owner, called as lessor, enjoying the tax benefits which are passed to the tenant, called as lessee, in the form of lower rent. Lease companies play a role of financial intermediaries who encourage investments by making funds available in an easy way. Leasing is now being considered as another alternative to financial instrument. Of late, there has been a remarkable growth in the leasing business. The rapid growth of leasing business has resulted in competition, which in turn has reduced the lease rentals significantly. In fact, leasing business has contributed economic growth and financial efficiency in a big way. In the changing economic and financial environment with global competitors, the lease financing has assumed a significant role as an alternative source of financing or close substitutes for debt financing. Now, let's discuss the meaning of lease. A lease is a contract between a lessor, who is the owner of the asset, and a lessee, who is a user of the asset, whereby the lessor gives the right to use the asset to the lessee over an agreed period of time for a consideration called the lease rental, either on monthly, quarterly, half yearly, or yearly basis. And some cases it may be weekly, daily, or hourly basis. According to AS 19, a lease is an agreement whereby the lessor conveys to the lessee the right to use an asset for an agreed period of time in consideration for a payment or series of payments. There are two types of lease. One is operating lease and the another is financial lease. We will discuss first operating lease. A lease is classified as an operating lease if the lessor doesn't transfer all risks and reward incidental to ownership of the asset. The lessee acquires rights to use the assets on a period-to-period basis. In other words, operating lease covers the period which is much shorter than the economic life of the asset. The lessor may lease the asset to different lessees, one after another, throughout its useful life. The rent payable by any one lessee during the lease period is not sufficient to cover cost of the asset fully. At the expiry of the term, the assessee reverts back to the lessor. Hence, such leases are called short-term lease. Students, let's discuss the salient features of an operating lease. It is a short term and cancelable lease. The period covered by any one lease agreement is much shorter than the economic life of the leased asset. The lease period may vary from an hour to 5 years. There are series of lease agreements, one after another, throughout the useful life of the leased asset. Operating lease usually contains a maintenance clause. Convenience and prompt service is the very basis of the operating lease. Rentals are usually higher as compared to other lease. Examples of operating lease are renting a car, truck, or a hotel room, including the provision for petrol, diesel, driver, or services of waiters in case of hotel rooms. Hiring of marriage hall, including provision for food, drinks, and bearers. Chartering a plane or ship, including provision of crew and other staff. Hiring computers and office equipments with operators, including provision for repairs and maintenance. Hiring crane services with operators. Now we will discuss finance lease. According to AS 19, a finance lease is a lease that transfers substantially all the risk and rewards incidental to ownership of an asset. It usually covers the full useful life of the asset or a period which is closer to its economic life. Such leases are termed as long-term or non-cancelable lease contract, during which the lessor receives rental that covers not only the cost of the asset but a reasonable return on the funds invested to acquire the asset. The repairs and maintenance of the leased asset is undertaken by the lessee. Let's now discuss the salient features of finance lease. The lessor transfers ownership of the asset to the lessee by the end of the lease term. The lessee has the option to purchase the asset at a price which is expected to be sufficiently lower than the fair value of the asset. The lease term is for the major part of the economic life of the asset, even if the asset is not transferred. The leased asset is of a specialized nature such that only the lessee can use it without major modification being made. In the event of cancellation of lease by lessee, lessor's losses due to cancellation are borne by the lessee. Gains or losses from the fluctuations in the fair value of the residual value fall on to the lessee. The lessee can continue the lease for a second term at a rent which is substantially lower than the market rent. The risk of obsolescence, repair, maintenance, and insurance rest with the lessee. Examples of finance lease are the fixed assets such as land and building, plant and machinery, ships and aircrafts, which are usually taken for use for their major or whole economic useful life or on perpetual basis. The exhibit shows the various advantages of leasing, which are no sunk cost, no cost of raising capital, simplicity, convenience, and flexibility, no obsolescence risk, and tax shield. These advantages are discussed in detail one by one. No sunk cost. Lease finance makes huge sum available for land and building, plant and machinery and other fixed assets, thus averting a large sum to be blocked in fixed assets. One may start business with necessary amount of working capital. Thus, it serves as an additional source of long-term finance for the leases. No cost of raising capital. The cost of raising long-term finances through issue of shares and debentures is totally avoided. The underwriting commission, the cost of issue of prospectus, and the other incidental charges has not to be incurred. Next, simplicity, convenience, and flexibility. Lease finance arrangements are easy and simple to make and flexible and convenient to operate as far as compliance of formalities are concerned. If an asset is required for short period, buying an asset and resale thereof may be time consuming, inconvenient and costly affair. No obsolescence risk. The leasee is always free to replace the outdated asset with a new one whenever there is a technological change is brought about. Computers are usually subject to rapid and unpredictable changes, hence leasee will always prefer for short-term cancelable lease. Tax shield. The lease rentals can be adjusted so as to provide maximum tax benefits. The lease rentals may be enhanced to avail tax concessions by lowering the taxable income, and on the contrary, lease rentals may be lowered to pass on the tax benefits for future if current income is already low. Maintenance and specialized service. The lessor is always better equipped to provide best possible maintenance and specialized services at low cost which cannot be provided by any other agency. Limitations of the leasing. There are two limitations of the leasing which can be described with the help of exhibit, that is restricted use and default. Restricted use. An asset taken on lease has to be used in accordance with the terms of agreement. Alteration or modification to suit the lease's requirements cannot be made. Further, any other condition such as of compulsory insurance may be of the terms of the lease contract. Default. In case of default, the lessee usually loses the right to use asset in case of finance lease, whereas he is required to pay damages in case of an operating lease. Despite these limitations, a large number of companies are being created with the object of exploiting tax shields and other benefits. Such companies do boost investment and productivity for leasing being an alternative to financing. Since lease rentals are similar to payments of interest on debt, leasing is a sense is an alternative borrowing. Thus, lease essentially involves a choice between debt financing and lease financing. Leasing companies play a role of financial intermediaries by encouraging investment by making funds available for leasing business purposes in a simplest way to achieve financial efficiency and to accelerate economic growth. Hire purchase financing for the entrepreneurs. Hire purchase is a system of selling goods whereby risk involved in transaction is kept to the minimum. It has the advantage of credit sale and ensures regular and periodical recovery of money through installments while keeping the title of the goods safe. In the words of Pickle, hire purchase is a system under which the property is acquired by payments made in installments during the period of which the title in the property remains with the hire vendor. The payments prior to the final are regarded as being purely in respect of hire, and title of the property does not pass to the hire purchaser until such final payment or some other consideration provided for in the contract has been fulfilled. Definition of hire purchase system. Hire Purchase Act 1972, Section 2, Subsection C states hire purchase agreement as hire purchase agreement means an agreement under which goods are let on hire and the hirer has an option to purchase them in accordance with the terms of agreement. It includes an agreement under which possession of goods is given by the owner to a person on a condition that such person will pay the agreed amount in periodical installments. The property in goods is to pass such person on the payment of the last of such installments, and such person has the right to terminate the agreement at any time before the property in goods so passes. Section 4 of Hire Purchase Act 1972 states that hire purchase agreement contains the hire purchase price of goods to which agreement relates, the cash price of the goods, the date on which the agreement shall be deemed to have commenced, number of installments by which the hire purchase price is to be paid, the amount of each of these installments, and the date upon which it is payable, and the person to whom and the place where it is payable. The goods to which agreement relates, where any part of hire purchase price is to be paid otherwise than by cash or check, the hire purchase agreement shall contain a description of that part of price. Now, statutory limit on hire purchase charges. The difference between hire purchase price and the cash price represents hire purchase charges. It is in fact the total amount of interest to be paid by hire purchaser to hire vendor. To avoid higher rate of interest charged by hire vendor, Section 7 puts the maximum limit of 30% of such installment or the charges as may be ascertained with the help of the following formula. Here SC is equal to CL into R into T upon 100, where SC stands for statutory charges, CL denotes the amount of cash price installment, R denotes rate as determined by central government in consultation with the RBI, and T denotes time period. Right of hire purchaser to purchase goods taken on hire. In case a hire purchaser intends to make outright purchase of the goods taken on hire after the agreement has been signed and the delivery taken, he can do so by giving 14 days prior notice to the hire vendor as required under the Hire Purchase Act under Section 7. He shall be required to pay the amount due to hire vendor after deducting the rebate under the Act. The rebate can be worked out as under: rebate is equal to 2 bracketed hire purchase charges into number of installments due divided by 3 bracketed total number of installments. Let's talk about Termination of agreement. The Hire Purchase Act provides that where total sum paid and due in respect of a hire purchase price immediately before termination exceeds one half of the hire purchase price, the hire purchaser is not required to pay any amount of termination. Where total sum paid and due in respect of hire purchase price immediately before termination does not exceed half of the hire purchase price, the hire purchaser shall be liable to pay the difference between half of the hire purchase price and amount already paid, or the amount so stipulated in the agreement, whichever is less. Let us have a brief view of the terms hire purchase, installment sale, and lease finance. Under hire purchase system, the property in goods called as ownership is transferred from hire vendor to hire purchaser only when last installment is paid. Every installment paid by the hire purchaser is treated as hire, and the hire vendor has the right to repossess the goods in case of any kind of default. The hire purchaser cannot tamper or transfer the goods until the payment of final installment. However, he has the right to terminate the agreement at any point of time before the transfer of ownership. The hire purchaser is entitled to claim depreciation and show the hired asset in the balance sheet along with the amount due to the hire vendor. The interest is charged to profit and loss account. Whereas an installment is a credit sale under which the property in goods is transferred immediately on the signing of the agreement. Every installment paid is treated as part of the price. The vendor has no right to repossess the goods but can sue for the amount due. The buyer has the right to sell, transfer, or dispose of the goods at any point of time but cannot terminate the agreement and return the goods to the vendor. The balance due is shown as secured loan on which interest is payable. On the other hand, under lease system, the entire rental is charged to P&L account. The lessee is not treated as owner and as such cannot claim depreciation and is not allowed to show the asset in the balance sheet. Students, now let's discuss some terminology used in this module. Cash price. It is the actual price of goods charged under normal cash sale or the amount paid for outright purchase. Hire purchase price. The total amount payable under the terms of hire purchase agreement in the form of down payment and installments. It consists of cash price plus interest. Down payment. It is the amount paid by hire purchaser to hire vendor at the time of signing of agreement or at the time of delivery of goods. Hire purchaser, also known as hirer, the one who purchases goods under hire purchase agreement. Hire vendor, the person who sells goods under hire purchase agreement. Hire Each installment paid by a hire purchaser is treated as hire. It includes part of cash price called as principal amount and the interest factor called as interest rate. Hire purchase charges, the difference between hire purchase price and cash price. Net hire purchase charges, it is the difference between net hire purchase price and cash price. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this module. Although leasing business has been growing very fast, recently there has been a shift to hire purchase as a popular means of financing assets to the entrepreneurs. Many entrepreneurs prefer hire purchase because of flexibility in terminating a hire purchase contract as compared to a leasing contract. In this module, lease financing has been discussed in detail. This shows the clear difference between the lease financing and hire purchase financing with particular examples in each. For the growth and expansion of the business activities, the entrepreneurs try to raise the finance from these two sources. Thank you.